be confused. Don't be confused. Hey guys, what's up? It's your boy Talk Williams, host and creator of what? Hip Hop 50th. But here's the question today on this Friday, July the 25th. That's right, we smack dead in the middle of anything that might look like summer, at least in the United States. But anyway, it's your guy, Talk Williams. I am the host, the creator, the YouTube content person of Hip Hop 50th. And as normal, what I'm about to talk about may not have any relation to hip hop in and of itself. That was just the name I grabbed when I initially started this channel because, hey, old school hip hop. The question here is, though, most of us use Chat-GPT. Like we know what that is. Chat-GPT, Sam Altman's Chat-GPT. Chat-GPT, the LLMs, the CAGs, the RAGs, Chat-GPT, that large language model. Chat-GPT, that professional bot that we use. Chat-GPT, we all know it. We all use it. If I look around this world today, look out the window. Look at that. See the railroad system? The condos, the buildings. Everybody's on Chat-GPT. Who isn't using it? Everybody's using it. The question I have today, here goes some blinds, is an easy solution to this, and it doesn't even require technology. Look, you just lift them up and put the camera underneath. But the question I have today, and I will throw that up on this board, is, while so many of us use Chat-GPT, if somebody was to ask you, what is Chat-GPT? How would you describe that? What is it? Chat-GPT itself, excuse me for my poetic license, my penmanship is garbage, but what is it? When I think about Chat-GPT, for the 5 minutes of the knowledge that I have about it, let me put the camera back on me for a second. I think about terms like LLMs. I think about things like, and I'll just write this up on the board. I think about terms, let me put this here, my terminology, and I'll say, if somebody says, well, tell us about Chat-GPT, and I'll say that Chat-GPT or some of the other ones, because we have OpenAI's, and that's Sam Altman and them, right? They have the Chat-GPT as we know it, right? Chat-GPT. And then you have Google and their version of it, I think, is Gemini, right? Gemini. And then Elon Musk, his version of it is Grok. And everybody's pumped. I love Grok 4, more 4, right? I think Gemini is on 2.5. I think Chat-GPT is on 4 dot something. We'll be releasing 4.5 if they haven't, all the way up to 5.0 if they will. And I'm making that up, but I'm just telling you what I think. And then we got, what is it? Anthropic. Anthropic has Claude, maybe? Yeah, Claude and Anthropic. That is, that's Dario, and I know I'm doing everybody an injustice with my penmanship. Dario Amodi, maybe? Maybe. Amode, maybe I spelled that wrong. However that goes. So when I think about the chat bots, the current things that we use, AI, artificial intelligence, I think about these guys. You know, it's almost like when we used to think about the popular 7 technologies, right? The FANG. Remember when FANG was a thing? Remember FANG? F-A-N-G. Remember that was a thing when it comes to the stock market. And the F was for was for Facebook, and the A was for Apple. The other A was for Amazon. The N was for NVIDIA. The G was for Google. And then they had like outside of it an asterisk because it was a toss up in the air whether Tesla was a car company. Oh, I spelled Tesla wrong. Whether Tesla was a car company or a tech company, right? So it was always that asterisk there for Tesla. But fame, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, NVIDIA, Google. But now the usual suspects when it comes to AI is Sam Altman and them, OpenAI, which is Chat-GPT, Google's Gemini, Elon Musk Grok, Anthropic's Claude, and that's Dario Modi. But the question becomes, what is it? And I'm not saying this to harass or make somebody feel conscientious because they can't explain it, even though people use it. But I think if you check with the average person who may not be trained or schooled or studied, and even some of the ones that are, they just give you different reasons. Not reasons, they give you different answers. I apologize. That's what they give you. They give you different responses to that very question. What is a Chat GPT? What are those bots? What is that thing? What is the magic under the hood? So here of late, I've decided to increase my understanding. Why have I decided to increase my understanding? I'll give it to you real plainly. I won't hold you. I am a knowledge worker, as many of you are. As a knowledge worker, meaning the things that I do, how I pay all my bills, how I earn my living, if I give my daughter some money, how I can send it to them and why I can send it to them is based on what I know, and I just use my hands on the keyboard. It's not based on what I can do with my hands without a keyboard. Let me just say that. So that typical thing that we call labor, no matter what the domain, no matter what the profession is, I don't do it. Everything I do is based on either me staying up relentless nights studying, whether it was the scripted way through school or out of school, through meeting with people, through using online resources, YouTube University, whatever that is. I'm a knowledge worker. So it's important for me to understand a little more than just the general use, because for the immediate, not in the distant future, but for the immediate now, and in the close future, but not the distant future, I think I will be replaced, whether it's through my clients, through a job, through some other opportunities, not necessarily by AI in and of itself. I think that first wave of replacement, because it's not like I'm an engineer, it's not like I'm a developer, I'm not all the way up there, but I'm not first line customer service either. So I think my replacement will come as a result of me not understanding AI, not appreciating or identifying use cases, not being able to use it as a tool, as a resource, not being able to use it to, as they say, augment, AUGMENT, as a form of augmentation, an augmentation tool, a resource to improve upon what I do, whatever that is, whether that's designing databases, moving data over, data analysis, creating algorithms, using Python, whatever it is I think I do as a knowledge worker, I need to couple that with some AI tools. And I need to understand it. I think that's even better. Because like I say, for what I do and how I get paid and how I earn my keep, I don't think I'm gonna be readily replaced by the AI itself. I think I'll be readily replaced. Can I say readily, right? Let me say it again. Readily replaced by those who understand and embrace and are working progressively to use AI and identify it in their little protocol or function or whatever they do to resolve problems, different things like that. That's how I look at it. So I say that because I don't want anybody to think I'm picking on you. But if you are a knowledge worker and you like views like this, like if you enjoy when you're working for a client, being on the 12th floor or the rooftop of some of these buildings, and you want to kind of continue that view, have the whole room to yourself where they say, Talk, go in there and do whatever you want to do, man. Yeah, why not? It's Friday afternoon. Go do your thing. If you need us, call us. If not, do what you do. Hey, then guess what? In a movie by State Property with Benny Siegel, old school hip hop, get down or lay down. So back to the subject of matter before I turn this into a Friday evening. If somebody was to ask you, what is Chat-GPT? How would you describe it? Here's my understanding as I go forward. Let me throw some things over here if I can with this eraser, which doesn't really work well. So let me try this eraser, which actually works better. Here's what I've been looking at. Here's what I've been paying attention to. It's like anything else, guys. If you're already in the tech space or you're coming into it, you want to get familiar with the language. When it comes to these, what's commonly known now as a general term, people will say Chat-GPT. Now, they don't necessarily mean OpenAI's version, but they do mean some sort of chat bot that functions the way OpenAI's does. There's terms that if you're a tech worker and if you're a knowledge worker and if you want to be able to represent or articulate or even understand, if you had to express it or have that conversation and increase your knowledge, you want to get familiar with. Of course, AI. If you're a knowledge worker, a tech worker, just don't AI it out. Be able to add some context to AI. Then you want to get into maybe machine learning. You want to get into the neural networks. You want to get into deep learning. You want to get into, of course, be familiar with and understand algorithms. You want to get into large language models. Yep. You want to get into foundational models. And I'm not saying, listen to what I'm saying. I'm not saying to you, become an engineer. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about you going back to school. I'm not talking about you becoming an engineer. I'm saying you should have a higher sense than many about what AI is, what machine learning is, what neural networks are, what deep learning is, algorithms, even though I left the M out. Yeah, sorry. LLMs, large language models, foundational models. And here's the other thing. I'm gonna throw 2 of 20 more on there, right? If you somebody that prides yourself off of, oh man, I know how to stand up SQL databases, NoSQL databases and all that, well, guess what? That's good, because in the world of AI, with these neural networks and these large language models, that ain't gonna be enough. You gotta know about vector databases. Yeah, you gotta know about vector DBs. You gotta know about vector embeddings. Yeah, you wanna know about that. In addition to you coming from a SQL, NoSQL, I'm a database person, I know how to do it and all that. Listen to what I'm saying, let me flip it back on me. I'm not trying to pick on nobody. I'm not saying you gotta know these terms. These are terms that I'm finding myself having to read about, understand, and make sense of so I can have a better idea of how the training from the sources, whether it be text, photos, other media, whether it be structured data, whatever that is, when it goes in for training, when it enters the training, what's the training area? The LLM, the large language model, the black hole, if you want to say, the black box, if you want to say, whatever you want to call it, that LLM, that large language model, when that information is ingested into there from the sources and it goes through its training, what's involved there? Why is it artificial intelligence? Why is it important that they're trying to mimic a neural network? Why is that important? What is the idea there? When we know, or some of us are aware, that that's how the brain is described. I know everybody says muscle memory and all of that, but the reality of it is our brains as human beings are not muscles. They're not. They're neural networks. They're just a collage, a mosaic, a collection of nerves. So when you talk about artificial intelligence and these large language models, they're striving to represent the neural networks, okay? They're trying to mimic that. They haven't done it, but they're trying their best. But why is that? So it's just leading me there. What's the difference between machine learning versus deep learning? And then you find out, well, you want to become familiar with arrays, matrices, maybe some lattices, and how many layers. Because when you get to deep learning is kind of the same thing machine learning is. It's just that you're three or more than three levels down, more than three levels in on that neural network. That's why you gotta have a neural network, right? You're like more than three levels deep in those arrays, those matrices, those lattices, or whatever they call, okay? Yeah, and then the algorithms, they exist, and then the large language model, it exists. In fact, if you think about, and I've talked to people, I talk to other tech workers, right? And when they be talking about the large language models of Chat-GPT or the like, you'll hear them talk and they never mention databases. You know why? Because even myself, I've never heard of vector databases. I've never heard of vector embeddings. I talked to one guy and he says, yeah, Todd, I work with vectors and different things like that. I said, explain it to me. And you know what he was explaining to me? How he did some work for a client one time and they had to change the format to a vector. You know, SVG format, .svg, so you could stretch it and do whatever for printing on t-shirts and whether you're printing it on cups or other things, posters, and you don't lose stuff, right? I was like, that's not that. And I said, nah, bruh. Vector databases, vector embeddings. What is the main goal or function there? Well, traditionally, if we look at some of these other databases, like SQL, MySQL, NoSQL, and some of the familiar faces. What do they deal with mainly? Structured data. I'm running out of room, but don't worry about it because you can't read my doctor writing no way. Structured data, that's what they deal with. You can move a spreadsheet over there. It puts it in columns. It gives it a field name or a column name with rows. So now you can have names and then the records is the rows and all of that stuff. All that structured data. Vector databases though, vector embeddings. Their goal is not only to work with unstructured data, but their goal is to convert that image, convert that Word document, convert that spreadsheet, convert that PDF or whatever that source or content is, it has to convert it into a mathematical representation. That's what it does. And it's stored as a mathematical representation, for the most part, in these vector databases, not the conventional way relational databases store structured data. So if you take a Word document, the same Word document, and let's say it's just 5 rows, 5 records, 5 columns, or something on the Word document, simple as some contact information, and you just put it over there in SQL or put it in one of the other typical databases, it is stored in there as the text in and of itself. You have to do vector embeddings, though, for the vector databases. It's going to converge that. It's going to transform that. It's going to converge that into what? A mathematical representation. That's what it's going to do. That's why you start talking about, and I'll make room for it, tokens, weights, and the like. Tokenizers, Chat-GPT being a transformer, talk about transformers, and not Bumblebee, but transformers. I know it's impossible to read anything, and I'm through writing. And that's pretty much it. I'm gonna let it go at that. Here's what I'm saying. I'm not saying I know this stuff. What I'm saying to you guys is, if you're a knowledge worker, if you pride yourself on, I earn my keep because of my knowledge, and I'm in the tech field or whatever that is, you want to become familiar and be able to identify and get out of a vacuum. However great you thought you was, you can still play great later on. Come down off the throne and get familiar with the terminology, the knowledges, and contextual use of these AI models. Because augmentation, you can improve. Augmentation, you can make better. Augmentation. You have your own R2D2 before augmentation turns into what? Replacement. Because that's what's next. All right, anyway, I'm going to jump. It's your boy, Talk Williams. I love y'all. I appreciate when y'all come through, stop at the channel. This is just a series of videos that I will be shooting to kind of monitor my own development and understanding of these large language models, different things like that. I think the next one I'm gonna do is about LLM context windows. Yeah, context. You know how we talk and have a conversation and we say, nah, man, you gotta keep the context. That's out of context, right? Well, these large language models, when we're talking to them, when we're prompting back and forth, and we say, damn, this thing be knowing what I'm talking about. It knows what we're talking about, and it appears to be considering everything we've been prompting back and forth in a particular conversation or session based on the context, because they all have a context window. What is the context window, though, of these LLMs, of these Groks, of these Claudes, of these Chat-GPTs, of these Geminis? A context window is simply, not simply, but one of the basic principles to a context window with the LLMs is its ability to consider that full session or breadth of that conversation that we're having. When we're prompting, okay, that's great, this is what I mean. Okay, can you also consider this and all of that? So all of the prompts that we're putting in and all of the feedback that is given back and all of the images that we upload and all of those things, they go into this context window. And it used to be small, right? It used to be like we have run out of it if we keep going back and forth with the Chat-GPT or any of them now, right? Or then, not now. But they've increased the window. It's sort of like a cached memory And the reason why they call it a context window is because it's not just memorizing or caching what the conversation is. It's kind of doing its best effort in the machine language world or deep learning world or the AI world of contextualizing the to and fro, the answers given, the questions provided, and stuff like that. And they've increased it, you know? So unless you go all day with one of them, where you're just in there battling and you're trying to get some work done and you on a project, it's just like y'all kicking it, y'all vibe coding, but you're just doing it with one of the chats, right? The chat bots. You won't run out. You can save it, you can have it. But people that's deep in it, they run out. It'll say, hey man, that conversation over. What does that mean? What does that mean? It doesn't mean it wipes out the entire context of the prompting back and forth. What it does mean is this. Whatever we did early on, I'm overwriting the beginning of that in this context window, in this so-called cache memory sort of, I'm remembering what we're talking about, even 2 days later for that. But there is a thing called hallucination. Yeah, hallucination is back. It's not just old school back in the day, which you do off of LSD or MDA 25. It's back. And where does it show up at? In any of these popular bots. Anyway, peace. Enjoy. I'll holler at you.